Nobody expected Ellen's biggest surprise to become her most heartbreaking moment. What started as a celebration ended in silence, tears, and a conversation that changed everything. When 16-year-old Emily spoke 3 words that stopped the show, Ellen made a choice that broke every rule of television. It was a perfect Tuesday afternoon at Warner Bros. Studios in Burbank. The Ellen DeGeneres show set sparkled under the bright stage lights, the familiar blue and white backdrop gleaming as always. Ellen bounced across the stage in her signature navy blazer and comfortable white sneakers, her infectious energy radiating through the studio filled with 300 enthusiastic audience members. "All right, everybody, are you ready for something special?" Ellen grinned, holding up her hands as the crowd erupted in cheers. "Because today we're doing one of my favorite things. We're celebrating someone who deserves all the love in the world." The cameras panned across the excited faces in the audience, capturing the anticipation that always built during Ellen's surprise segments. Someone's life was about to change, someone's dreams were about to come true. It was the magic Ellen had perfected over 16 years of daytime television. "Now," Ellen continued, walking to center stage with that familiar twinkle in her eye, "I want everyone to help me welcome a very special young lady. Emily Chen from San Francisco, California. Come on down here." The spotlight found Emily immediately, sitting in the 3rd row with her family. She was 16, petite with long black hair and wise brown eyes that seemed older than her years. She wore a soft pink sweater that her mother had chosen specially for the show, and when the light hit her she looked genuinely shocked. "Me?" Emily mouthed, pointing to herself with a small smile that lit up her entire face. "Yes, you. Come on down here, birthday girl," Ellen called out, gesturing enthusiastically toward the stage. Emily made her way down the aisle slowly, her family cheering behind her. Her mother, Lisa, an elegant woman in her 40s, was crying happy tears. Her father, David, clapped enthusiastically, and her younger brother, Tommy, was practically bouncing in his seat with excitement. As Emily reached the stage, Ellen met her with open arms, enveloping her in one of those warm Ellen hugs that had become legendary. "How are you feeling?" Ellen asked, pulling back to look at Emily's face. "Overwhelmed," Emily laughed, her voice soft but clear. "I can't believe I'm actually here." "Well, believe it, sweetheart, because today is extra special. It's your 16th birthday, isn't it?" "It is," Emily nodded, still seeming to process that this was really happening. 16, that's a big one," Ellen announced to the audience, who responded with enthusiastic applause. "And Emily, I understand you've been through quite a journey this past year, haven't you?" Emily's expression grew more serious, but she maintained her gentle smile. "I have. It's been a year of challenges, but also blessings." Ellen's producers had briefed her thoroughly on Emily's story. Diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia just over a year ago, Emily had undergone intensive chemotherapy treatment. The family had shared in their application that Emily had just completed her final round of treatment and had been declared cancer-free just 2 weeks ago. It was supposed to be the perfect comeback story, the kind of triumph that made for inspiring television. "Now for everyone watching," Ellen said, turning to address the camera directly, "Emily has been fighting leukemia this past year, and I am so incredibly proud to tell you all that she just finished her treatment and has been declared cancer-free." The audience erupted in applause, rising to their feet in spontaneous celebration. Ellen beamed at Emily, expecting to see joy and relief on the teenager's face. Instead, she saw something else entirely. Emily's smile had faltered, and there was a look in her eyes that Ellen couldn't quite read. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was something that made Ellen's host instincts kick in, that subtle shift in energy that experienced performers learn to recognize. "That's amazing news, right, Emily?" Ellen said, her voice carrying just a hint of uncertainty. Emily looked out at the cheering audience, then back at Ellen. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. The celebration continued around them, but Ellen was focused entirely on Emily's face. "Emily," Ellen prompted gently, stepping closer. "You okay, sweetheart?" "Ellen," Emily said quietly, her voice barely audible over the applause, "I need to tell you something." The crowd was still celebrating, still cheering, completely unaware that anything was amiss. But Ellen heard the tone in Emily's voice, saw the expression on her face, and something cold settled in her stomach. "What is it, honey?" Ellen asked, her voice lower now, more intimate. Emily looked directly into Ellen's eyes, and in that moment, Ellen saw something that stopped her cold. It was fear. Raw, honest, 16-year-old fear that no amount of bravery could completely hide. "The cancer came back," Emily whispered. 3 words, 3 simple words that hit Ellen like a physical blow. The audience was still applauding, still celebrating, completely unaware that the world had just shifted on its axis. Ellen stared at Emily, her mind trying to process what she'd just heard. "What?" Ellen whispered back, leaning closer. "It came back," Emily repeated, tears starting to well up in her eyes. "3 days ago. The doctors found new cells. I relapsed." Ellen felt the air leave her lungs. Around them the celebration continued. The cameras kept rolling. The audience kept cheering. But between Ellen and Emily, time had stopped. "Does your family know?" Ellen asked, glancing quickly toward Emily's section where Lisa, David, and Tommy were still clapping and smiling. Emily shook her head, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "I haven't told them yet. I wanted today to be perfect for them. They've been through so much, and they were so happy when we got selected for the show. I couldn't ruin this for them." Ellen DeGeneres had hosted thousands of shows. She'd handled unexpected moments, difficult revelations, emotional breakthroughs. But this was different. This was a 16-year-old girl carrying the weight of devastating news alone, trying to protect her family even as her own world crumbled. "Oh, Emily," Ellen breathed, and without thinking, she reached out and pulled the teenager into another hug. This time it wasn't for the cameras or the audience. It was just human connection, one person trying to comfort another in an impossible moment. The audience began to sense that something was happening. The applause started to die down as people noticed Ellen and Emily hugging for longer than usual, noticed the tears on Emily's face. Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. She pulled back from Emily and looked directly at her production team in the booth. Then she did something unprecedented. She held up her hand, palm out, the universal signal to stop. "Cut the music," she called out, her voice carrying across the studio with unmistakable authority. The celebratory music stopped immediately. The audience fell silent, confusion rippling through the crowd. Ellen walked to center stage, still holding Emily's hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ellen announced, her voice different now, stripped of performance, raw with emotion. "We need to take a moment here." The audience waited, sensing that something important was happening, but not understanding what. Ellen looked at Emily, who nodded slightly, giving her permission to share what she'd just learned. "Emily just told me something that changes everything," Ellen continued, her voice gentle but clear, "and I think she needs to share it with the people who love her most." Emily looked toward her family, saw their concerned faces, saw the confusion and worry starting to replace the celebration. Her mother had half risen from her seat, clearly sensing that something was wrong. "Mom, Dad," Emily called out, her voice stronger than Ellen had expected. "Can you come down here?" Lisa Chen was out of her seat immediately, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. David followed, carrying Tommy, and within moments the family was gathered on stage, surrounding Emily with protective love. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Lisa asked, reaching out to touch Emily's face, to wipe away the tears that were still falling. Emily looked at Ellen, who nodded encouragingly. This was Emily's moment, Emily's truth to tell. "The cancer came back," Emily said simply, and the words seemed to echo through the silent studio. Lisa's hands flew to her mouth. David's face went white. Tommy, too young to fully understand but old enough to sense the gravity, started to cry. "When?" Lisa whispered. 3 days ago. Dr. Martinez called with the test results." 3 days? David's voice broke. "Emily, why didn't you tell us?" "Because," Emily said, and now she was crying harder, "because you guys have been through enough. Because you were so excited about today, about the show, about celebrating. Because I wanted you to have one perfect day before we have to go through it all again." The studio was completely silent. 300 people holding their breath, watching a family receive devastating news in the most public way possible. But somehow, it didn't feel invasive. It felt sacred. Ellen stepped forward slightly. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, I am so sorry. We had no idea. If you need privacy, if you want to stop filming, whatever you need." Lisa looked at Ellen through her tears. "She's been carrying this alone for 3 days. She wanted to protect you," Ellen said softly. "She wanted today to be perfect for your family." David wrapped his arms around Emily, pulling her against his chest. "Emily, honey, we don't need perfect days. We need honest days. We need real days. We need you to share the hard things with us, not just the easy ones." Tommy, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Does this mean Emily's going to die?" The question hung in the air, like a physical presence. It was the question everyone was thinking, but no one wanted to ask. Emily knelt down to Tommy's level, taking his small hands in hers. I don't know, buddy. I really don't know, but I know that whatever happens, we're going to face it together this time, as a family. Ellen watched this moment unfold, this raw display of love and fear and honesty, and felt something shift inside her. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This wasn't television. This was life in all its messy, terrifying, beautiful reality. Emily, Ellen said gently, what do you need right now? Emily looked around the studio, at the cameras, at the audience, at her family, and then back at Ellen. I need to not be brave for a minute, she said quietly. I need to be scared and 16 and not have to protect everyone else's feelings. Ellen nodded, understanding completely. Okay, let's do that. She turned to address the studio. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to clear the stage for a few minutes. Emily and her family need some privacy. But as the crew started to move, as the cameras began to pull back, Emily spoke up. Wait, she said, her voice stronger now. Actually, can we just stay here? All of us? I've been alone with this for 3 days, and I don't want to be alone anymore. Ellen looked at Emily with something approaching awe. Are you sure? I'm sure. These people, Emily gestured to the audience, they came here today expecting to celebrate with me. Maybe they can just be here with me instead. Not celebrating, not being sad, just being here. Ellen had never experienced anything like this in all her years of television. A 16-year-old girl, facing a cancer relapse, choosing to share her vulnerability with 300 strangers and millions of viewers. If that's what you want, Ellen said, then that's what we'll do. She walked to center stage, addressing the audience directly. Emily has asked you all to just be here with her family as they process this news. Not to cheer, not to console, just to be present. Can you do that? The audience nodded as one, and the energy in the studio shifted to something Ellen had never felt before. It was like being in a church or at a vigil, or in any sacred space where people gather to witness important moments. Ellen sat down on the stage floor, cross-legged like a child. Emily looked surprised, then smiled slightly and sat down next to her. Soon the entire Chen family was sitting in a circle on the studio floor, with Ellen as an honorary member. So, Ellen said quietly, what's the next step? What did the doctors say? More chemo, Emily answered, stronger this time and maybe a bone marrow transplant. They want to start next week. That's scary, Ellen said simply, and Emily looked at her with gratitude for not trying to minimize or sugarcoat. It's terrifying, Emily agreed. The first time I thought I was brave, but this time I know how hard it is. I know how much it hurts. I know how sick I'm going to get. But you also know something else, Ellen said gently. You know you can survive it. You know you're stronger than you think, and you know you don't have to do it alone. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How do you know that? Ellen was quiet for a moment, looking at this remarkable young woman who had just taught her something about courage. Because, Ellen said finally, someone who has the strength to carry devastating news for 3 days to protect her family's happiness, someone who chooses honesty over comfort, someone who asks strangers to witness her fear instead of hiding from it, that person has everything she needs to fight whatever comes next. Ellen reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, just as she had done countless times before with guests who had moved her. But this felt different. Emily, this has my personal number on it. Not my assistant's, not my manager's, mine, and I want you to promise me something. What? I want you to promise me that you'll call me on the bad days, on the days when the chemo makes you too sick to move, on the days when you're scared, on the days when being 16 and brave feels like too much to handle. Promise me you'll call. Emily took the card with trembling hands. Why would you do that for me? Because, Ellen said, today you reminded me why I do this show. It's not about surprises or giveaways or making people laugh, though I love doing those things. It's about connection. It's about showing up for each other when things get hard. It's about being real in a world that often feels fake. Ellen stood up and began to remove her navy blazer, the one she'd worn for every show, the one that had become part of her television identity. What are you doing? Emily asked. This jacket has been with me for every show I've ever hosted, Ellen said, draping it gently around Emily's shoulders. It's seen good days and bad days, celebrations and heartbreaks. Now I want it to be with you during your treatment. When you're in the hospital, when you're scared, when you need to feel like someone's got your back, you put this on. The jacket was too big for Emily's small frame, but she pulled it around herself like armor. Ellen, I can't take this." "You're not taking it," Ellen smiled. "You're borrowing it. And when your treatment is over, when you're healthy and strong and ready to take on the world, you bring it back to me. Deal?" Emily looked at Ellen, at her family, at the audience that had sat in respectful silence throughout this entire exchange, and for the first time since learning about her relapse, she smiled a real smile. Deal. The show ended differently than any show in Ellen's history. There was no dancing, no music, no dramatic exits. Emily and her family walked off stage together, wrapped in love and honesty and the knowledge that they wouldn't face what came next alone. In the months that followed, Emily kept her promise. She called Ellen on the bad days, on the days when hope felt impossible to find. Ellen kept her promise too, answering every call, sending care packages to the hospital, visiting when she was in San Francisco. Emily's treatment was harder the second time, just as she'd feared, but she was also stronger, just as Ellen had predicted. She fought with the grace and determination that had been evident in her willingness to share her truth on national television. The jacket went with her to every treatment, became famous among the nursing staff, was featured in articles about Emily's journey. It became a symbol of the connection between a talk show host and a teenager who had reminded her why authenticity matters more than entertainment. 18 months later, Emily walked back onto Ellen's stage, healthy, cancer-free, and carrying the navy blazer carefully in her arms. The audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted 5 full minutes. "How do you feel?" Ellen asked, tears in her eyes as she looked at this young woman who had become so much more than a guest. "Grateful," Emily replied, "for the treatment that worked, for the family that supported me, for the strangers who became friends, and for a talk show host who taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is tell the truth." Emily handed the jacket back to Ellen, but Ellen shook her head. "Keep it," she said. "You've earned it. Besides, I think it looks better on you." The episode of Emily's return became one of the most watched in the show's history, not because of any celebrity appearances or elaborate surprises, but because it reminded viewers that real courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and choosing love anyway. Ellen continued to wear blazers, but never the same style. When asked why, she'd simply say, "Some things are more important than fashion. Some things are about keeping promises." Emily went on to study oncology, inspired by the doctors who had saved her life twice. She still wears Ellen's jacket to important events, still calls Ellen on the anniversary of that first episode, still carries the lesson she learned that day, that vulnerability shared becomes strength multiplied. The Chen family learned that perfect days aren't about avoiding hard truths, but about facing them together. They learned that love isn't diminished by difficulty, but deepened by it. And Ellen learned that sometimes the best television happens when you stop trying to make television and simply choose to be human instead.